Ah, yes, and the mic is on. Welcome everybody, day 3 of the World Travel Market. How excited is everyone? I mean, it is something to celebrate that we are here this year and we have a World Travel Market. Look at where we were this time last year. So it's certainly something to be very, very, very happy about, and hopefully we will, over the next half hour or so, they've only allowed us half an hour, we really wanted to speak for a lot more. But we'll try and condense some of the exciting things that are happening both at G-Adventures and some of our surveys that we've done at Wanderlust with our audiences, with our readers, and tell you a little bit about how has this pandemic, if you like, affected one of the world's most known brands in their sector, G-Adventures. And I'm so delighted to have Brian Young here with me, who's the Managing Director for G-Adventures in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. We'll be talking about the whole planet, but we'll hear a little bit more about what's happening in the UK, in Europe, the rest of the world as well. So let's see how we can inspire you, if you like, that to let you know that what you've been going through is something that a lot of us have been going through in the industry, and give you a few of our secrets into how audiences are looking to the future of travel. So thank you for joining us today. We'll try and keep this exciting and give you a few golden nuggets. Brian, what a difficult year.
It certainly has been, yeah. It's interesting coming to World Travel Market because you reconnect, lots of people in the travel industry that you haven't seen for such a long period of time. But the other bit is when you actually get into face-to-face meetings and you start talking about things and you forget that we've been in this pandemic for 20-odd months.
Yes.
So what feels like the last time you met to talk about business feels like a year ago, but it's actually 3 years ago. And that's quite massive when you think about that gap from pre-pandemic to where we are right now, and what's happened in between it has been quite seismic. So it's great that World Travel Market has operated and that we've managed to get the industry back face-to-face doing what we do best. And I think what we do best is not on Zoom. It's in an environment like this for sure.
That's right. No digital experience can replace the physical contact, if you like. And the same for travel, really. You can do all the virtual tours you want, but there's nothing like really being out there. But I mean, it has been a challenging time, as you say, for G-Adventures as an organization. You've had to adapt. You've had to change the way that you've been doing things. Talk to us a little bit about that journey that you've been through over the past 20 months.
It's funny. I was talking to someone about this last night. So going into the start of COVID, it started to come out, and we start to understand, okay, there's this virus that started in China. It's starting to spread. So you sort of take it. You have to be cognizant of it, but at the same time, it was business as usual because in the past we've had SARS or bird flu and such like. So then you start to realize, actually, now suddenly this destination is going to shut its borders down because, it's starting to increase. Then another one. So what we had was, I think, a 2-week period leading up to where we started having conversations about cancellations or what's going to happen if they can't get into there because this happens. That then proceeded into from 1 meeting a day to suddenly we're into 3 meetings a day, to suddenly creating a war room in our head office in London and over in Canada. And we were constantly in meetings. And the globality of our company meant that, we're working in the office in UK till God knows what time. And just trying to keep on top of it. We would have information that we would pass out to our partners, and it would literally change 2 hours later. And we were scrambling then to update that information. So it was very confusing, for our staff to keep on top of, as certainly in our call center, and also all of the partners that we work with and all of our customers that are traveling with us, trying to update and then update again that information. And it got to a point, I'll never forget it, it was on a Friday, and we'd had a meeting on the Thursday, and I think we finished at like 11 o'clock in the evening. I remember getting home on the train, and I was absolutely knackered, and thinking, this is getting out of control. We can't control this situation. And thinking, how do we get a grip of this? And we went back in the next day, and our owner, Bruce, came into the war room and said, right, guys, what are we going to do here? And we literally said, we have to suspend all of our tours and operations around the world because this is just speeding up, and it's going to get to a point where it's going to be who can actually get passengers back quickly to their home countries, and that's exactly what happened. Basically, we suspended all of our tours on a Friday evening at about 6 or 7 o'clock. I remember our marketing director, Ant, at the time, when we said to him, said, listen, you need to come in here, I need to update you what's about to happen. We're about to go out to all of our partners worldwide to say we're suspending tours. And I remember him saying, you're joking, aren't you? You know, the severity of it, I think. But, you know, the reality was that. And then it was manic, like beyond belief. Our partners scrambled. No one had ever done that sort of thing before. And what had happened is we'd gone out to the market. Literally behind us came everybody else. So we had so many phone calls and, trying to keep our partners abreast of what's happening. They were phoning us, what's happening with this, what's happening with that. I remember that weekend just going in a blur. So the first part of that was just literally trying to get information out and keep abreast of the situation with everybody. And then the second part to that weekend, as we got to the back end, became a huge operational uplift. Is like we've got passengers all over the world, as you do with G Adventures, and they're not in your typical places. So the airlift was also closing down because borders were closing. So we had to then, really mobilize all of our teams around the world to get all of our passengers back. And I remember, and it will stick with me probably for the rest of my life, Tunisia. We had, I think, 4 passengers that we're trying to get on flights back. And every time we thought we got them on a flight, no, that flight's full. And there was a real fear at that point that we might have these 4 customers stuck in Tunisia for a period of time if we couldn't get on a plane. And luckily, right at the last hour, we managed to get these passengers out. But that was a phone call that went backwards and forwards for, hours on end. But it just sticks with me because everywhere else seemed to be going okay except for these poor, 4 passengers. Then once we got through that bit and, settled down, then it was realization of, right, okay, the world shut down in some respects. Where do we go from there? How long do we think this is going to go? No one had any idea that it would go on for as long as it has. But then you have to start to think as a business, okay, if this carries on the way it is, you then have to restructure your business quite quickly. So we then, got involved in lobbying of the government in the UK alongside ATAS, which is the Association of Touring and Adventure Specialists, and ABTA, Save Future Travel, for furlough, for grants for businesses, travel agents, etc. Because, it was really important at that point that we got some backing, to help the industry. So furlough, came into play. We put a number of our people on furlough at that point in time. Then you start to look at the business and say, look, everyone rushed to this, stay home, stay safe, and when the world opens up, we'll be there ready for you. So you had to switch all of your marketing, which is normally full on into, aspirational sales, and engagement and such likes, to that whole sympathetic of the situation and not trying to be in our customers' faces in terms of, selling product and such likes. But then there does come a reality that you've got to work to the point of, like, as we go through this, we're going to come out of this. So you then have to start to think about, well, what does that look like, and look very quickly, because we're a global company. It was evident as well that we're likely to come out of this in stages around the world. Not all of our business is going to come back at the same time. So we had to do a lot of time sitting down with our customers first and foremost. You can rush very quickly, I think, and make assumptions as a company about what customers want, certainly from a health and safety perspective. But actually, you've got to marry up what is the right thing to do from a safety perspective, but at the same time ask your customers what they expect of you as a tour operator as well. So we did a lot of, go out to our customer database, find out what their expectation of us as a company. When we started traveling, what do they expect of us? Then we put all of those safety protocols together, and we launched out then our travel with confidence policy, which covered everything that we did. Then at the same time, we sort of had a realization that even when you can travel, the customers' mindsets are going to be different. Some are going to be, listen, I just want to get on holiday. I don't care, as long as there's safety measures in play, I just want to go. Others would have been more cautious about that and want to make sure that, yes, I want to travel, but I want to make sure that I'm traveling in a safe environment. So we created a suite of tours that were the Travel with Confidence Plus collection. So, if you're on a coach, you had that row to yourself, my own room and such like. So they were added over the top of our policy in play. Then, there was a lot of talk about creating bubbles. So in the UK, as an example, when we were in lockdown, there was this talk of, as we come out of it, if you had a partner that you're seeing, but you obviously haven't been able to see, maybe you could create a bubble so you could see that, or friends and family. So we sort of looked at that and said, actually, there's an opportunity here, because if people want to travel, they may well want to travel, but in their own confines and not necessarily with other people on one of our tours. So again, from feedback from our customers, we created a Book Your Bubble collection. So you could take a normal tour, but actually just take it for yourselves. So my family, your family, we're really close. We could go on holiday together, have that experience, but actually cocoon ourselves within our own environment. So there were a number of things that, we looked to do during that period, knowing that as we come out, there's expectation of what's going to be wanted from us, try and understand the situation from our customers' perspective. So that was a lot of work went into all of that.
It does sound like it.
Yeah,
It does sound like it.
But the thing about G Adventures is we're privately owned, and for those of you that know us, there's a chap called Bruce Poontip. He's an entrepreneur, he's very demanding, and the company's 30, we were 30 years old in the pandemic, which is a real shame because we would have had one hell of a party, but, such is life. But that entrepreneurial spirit that he evokes in our organisation goes through the DNA of our business, and I think that we always look at ourselves as a 30-year-old startup business, and I think one of the things where that really bore true to its senses in pandemic, when we literally had to constantly adapt and innovate our business, due to the situation that was around us. And, lots of companies, you get to a certain size, there's lots of fat in the business. They talk about, oil tankers versus speedboats, and about how quick you can turn a business around. And one of the things that I'm proud of is that the team at G Adventures, I think adapted very, very quickly. And I think it's that entrepreneurial spirit that we have, not just because of Bruce as the founder. I think it literally transcends through our business. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. And I think it's, can I say, it sounds like a traumatic experience. Like,
the hardest bit, I've been with G Adventures nearly 7 years, and it still hurts to say this now, that, 6 of those, or 5.5, however long we've been in this pandemic, but we're building this business. And, I think the team in the UK and Europe have been phenomenally successful. They're brilliant. And we built a great team and a great business. We've won lots of accolades for what we do. The hardest bit is when you dismantle all of that, to get through a pandemic and, go through that sort of hibernation period as we did. Really difficult bit for me as a leader, if I'm honest with you, was having to face up and tell people that, they were unfortunately getting made redundant because of the situation. That the work and the stress and the pressure, I can take all of that. That bit for me was the hardest, the personal, with the team. We had a great team, and unfortunately I've had to let some of those people go.
And that's been seen across the travel and tourism industry.
100%, yeah.
Who hasn't suffered? I mean, you're all in this industry. You know exactly how difficult it has been for all of us, losing colleagues who we love, who were very competent, or otherwise very healthy businesses that are no longer healthy. I think that's, the biggest impact that we've seen through the pandemic is that, while we were celebrating, the advent of travel and tourism and all the good that came from it, there was an external break we could do absolutely nothing about.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's the hardest bit, is the people bit of our business. And the other thing is that, for those of you that might not know G Adventures, we're also a social enterprise business. So we have a foundation called Planetera that creates projects, community tourism projects around the world that benefit those local communities through which our tours travel through. And of course, they've been starved of tourism, and that has a huge impact to local communities. So, they need travel to sustain their communities and their well-being, So that was another big part of what we did through this whole lockdown, is look at that and say, how can we support those local communities, even though we don't have travellers travelling at the moment? What is it that we can do? So we've done loads and loads of things, fundraising, we've done virtual treks and such likes, we've raised money for porters, and lots of really amazing things that we've been able to do through the community of the travellers that travel with G, that have got engaged. Our travel agent partners have been amazing, supported and got engaged in all of that, because that's been an important bit for us as well. It's a key part of our DNA of what we do. So when travel stopped, we had to think very quickly about, well, how can we support that? And Planetera have done some great work where, we've looked at community tourism projects that thrive off of us taking our passengers through those projects, but how we've had to help them evolve themselves so that they can sustain that community business, so when they come out of the pandemic, they're still there. So there's been some great work being done on that side of it as well.
That sounds really, really important indeed.
Yeah.
And as you say, it's the communities all over the world that are really suffering from the lack of tourists, the lack of visitors, and we're seeing that in every destination, aren't we?
Definitely.
I think I'm very eager to also continue in a more positive tone, because we all know just how difficult it has been for everyone the past 20 months. But I'm very eager to hear, where are we now, Brian, with regards to the engagement you're seeing with audiences? We've been hearing a lot about this pent-up demand. Has it started translating into more activity? What's the state of play at the moment?
So I think, listen, most of the people in here are probably part of the industry. What hasn't helped is a traffic light system that's been up and down like there's no tomorrow. On top of that, all the testing regime that's been required. Now, I can sit here now because most of that has been eradicated, but that's been the biggest issue that the industry's faced, is being able to get travelling again. So if I look at our business from a global perspective, North America been travelling since last September, so we've operated trips throughout the whole of the pandemic. And then at the same time, you've got down in Australia and New Zealand, literally took the keys, locked it, threw them away, and are only just now, literally this week, opened up to allow people in. So you've got huge different things going on in all of that. But the positive side of it is that if I talk from the UK perspective, the minute that we managed to stop PCR testing in resort before you can get back to the UK, that created some confidence in the market, because I think the paperwork, is a faff. Even I'm in the travel industry. I went to Corfu with my friends for 3 days, and we were all getting in a state about, have you filled the passenger locator form out? What about this? So it's, that sort of stuff creates anxiety for people on top of traveling anyway, which can be a pain at times, at the airport and such like. So
yeah,
I think
certainly what our readers at Wanderlust are telling us. They all want to go out there, but it's the Byzantine bureaucracy that's sort of preventing them from doing that, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And the UK has been the king of that. We may not have locked the door per se.
Yeah.
We almost said, here's the door, but to get through that door...
Yes, no, I agree. So I think that's what, there is demand, and you saw it as, the traffic light system, you had, amber, green, people went travelling. They went to, short-haul destinations, which I can talk about what we did in that environment. But that was the key bit. You had people travelling. The paperwork was an issue. PCR test in resort was an issue because people worried about if they test positive, then they've got to stay for another 10 days and at a hotel they get told to go to. So relaxing of that has definitely seen a spike.
You have seen a spike. So people's confidence is returning, because we're still hearing from many, it's like, is this a temporary thing? Are we going to wake up in a month's time and just see a whole lot of countries added to the red list? Because the red list is still there.
No, it is, yes.
It's just, while it's empty at the moment, it is there. And that's creating uncertainty. But it's good to hear that you are saying...
Yeah, what we've seen is every time a barrier or an obstacle to travel comes down and it's easier, people go travelling. So, what we've seen is that red list get, from 54 to 7, now to none. But when that was lifted, again, we see an uplift in our business. And it's been interesting because through pandemic, the lead time was quite a way out, as you can imagine, because there's uncertainty as to when people can get going again. As soon as those restrictions start getting lifted, our lead time comes crashing down. And it's actually really low on the basis that most people are just trying to get away wherever they can go.
Isn't it fantastic? What we've had as traditional booking partners for decades are no longer valid.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a tabula rasa. We don't know when people are going to book, with what criteria are they going to book, what lead times. And I think the biggest problem that, I'll stick a little bit more to the destinations element of our discussion, Brian. One of the problems that we still have is that many of the perennial favorite destinations of your audiences, of Wanderlust audiences, remain hermetically sealed. They're still closed.
Sure, yeah.
They're still not allowed in. We can't go to Japan even if we wanted to.
Yeah.
Some are open, but many are not. So how, what change have you seen when it comes to the most desirable, if you like, destinations from your travelers?
So it's interesting. So there's two facets to this that I talk about. Is during the pandemic, we then start to look at, okay, bookings obviously drop off at that point. So what's the search data telling us in terms of the customers? So we started seeing this huge spike in searches for Kilimanjaro, Base Camp Everest, and then Base Camp Everest kept coming out as like at the very top. So then suddenly we're like, right, Geo, who runs our PPC, have a look at that, something's broken. You're clearly spending when you shouldn't be. And it wasn't a case of that, it was literally natural demand. So we saw all these bucket list type tours, safaris in Africa, etc. Suddenly, huge amount of search. What we found off the back of that, because it translated into bookings, is you got a lot of people in lockdown, suddenly realise, travel is very special and it gets taken away from you, just like that. And then the only thing that you can do is you're allowed out for an hour, so you suddenly reconnect with nature. You suddenly reconnect with going back outside, and you suddenly start getting active, more so than you ever would have done before. And what we've seen is those triggers have created this element of, I would always like to do that, so it's on a bucket list, or it's in the back of my mind of I'd like to actually we're going to.
Yes, and they also have the resources to do that because 100%. They haven't spent in the last 20 months.
Without a doubt.
All these little trips that were once like, a little weekend in Europe, a little 7-day sun and sea holiday and the Med, all of that's no longer happen. So you can afford to make those dream trips a reality.
So we've seen that side of it. So that was the interesting bit for us as we're coming through and seeing that more active style coming through. Then the other aspect is that, from my perspective, I'm really clear that, when we came out of lockdown, that the first bit of travelling that's going to be done will be into Europe. And most of the surveys of our customer base that we did said that they all wanted to travel closer to home. Well, they couldn't get to long haul anyway, as you say, most of it was shut down. And so I think in that first instance of I'm desperate to get travelling again, but actually I'm more confident and comfortable going somewhere a little bit closer to home than necessarily further afield. So with that, my view is always, well, when these corridors open, they're going to be into the mainstream mass market beach destinations, your Corfus, Ibizas, Mallorcas, etc. So one of the things, I said to my team is, we have to be cognizant of that. We have a great European product, but it's built for North American passengers. Right. So on that basis, we have to re-engineer our European program. And, so this is a great example of how good your team is when you say to them, look, we have the opportunity to develop a product portfolio that's true to G Adventures in Europe. Where do we think we should be developing that product? So, we have one of our team members is very enthusiastic about Ibiza, not necessarily for the clubbing side of it, but for the island.
Certainly not a destination you'd associate with adventure
travel. Well, no, 100%. So that was, one of the ideas that were put forward. Then, a couple of our guys have been to Madeira and come back and said, this is an amazing adventure playground.
And again, not a place you would associate with a youth audience either.
So then we said, okay, we're going to build out a European product that's going to go in tandem with where we think all the airlift's going to go, and not where people necessarily think of G Adventures. So we created tours in Ibiza, Corfu, and Corfu's got an amazing trek from the top of the island all the way through the centre of the island and down. Crete, you've got the Massamai Gorge over there. We've got Madeira, you know, the Azores, Portugal, Sicily, you name it.
Some of the destinations that are more traditionally known for those
Ah,
package, all-inclusive, sun and sea destinations, people are finally coming to see them under a different light.
That's
which is what,
the beauty of what we've done, yeah.
And I think it's not just you. I think it's the same Wanderlust readers have been telling us they are starting to rediscover Sword Hall with a different light. You don't have to find adventure after a 15-hour flight.
Yeah.
You know, it's very much here. It's right on our doorstep. You know, Europe is on our doorstep, no matter, you know, what some people claim. It's right here. We are part of it.
Yeah.
So it's about engaging with it in a meaningful way. So yeah, no, it's really good to hear that this is a trend that perhaps is here to stay. Is it, Brian?
Well, listen, so one of the things important to me, I didn't want us to build something that was a flash in a pan, you know, get us out of the pandemic, right, that's that, chuck that away and get back to where we were. We had to build something that's sustainable, that we can build upon for the future. If we're going to step into Ibiza, then we're going to step into Ibiza properly. We're going to run a series of tours there, and we're going to work with the tourism board and say we're going to bring a different side to Ibiza. That, you know, Ibiza's known for nightclubs and music and beach bars and such like. We can flip that, and actually we can tell a very different story about Ibiza. And the same for Corfu, you know, Tenerife and such like. So we wanted to build something that was sustainable, something that was part of our business for the long term, that we can then open up to the, you know, Australians, North Americans and such like. So
Great.
That program, I think, you know, is really good. And it was important at the time. Everybody was trying to rush to do tours in the UK.
Yes.
The problem for me is that we don't add any value to that. It's not what, you know, in the UK, selling to somebody in the UK to do a tour in the UK, we couldn't work out, you know, where that value chain comes from. Where are we going to add anything different? Our DNA is adventure.
Sure.
It's trekking, it's hiking, is a big part of what we do. So that's why we created.
And there's some great places to do that in the UK, as we all know. But you know, obviously,
that's not
that's not the value add. That's right. And let's talk a little bit about 2022. I really want to hear how you're booking. I think you all want to hear. What are the popular destinations? Where are people booking? We just had our Wanderlust Travel Awards yesterday.
Yeah.
And we asked our readers to tell us what their most desirable places to go to are. And we had some very, very interesting responses. Like the top country was Australia, right? So you would think a country that's been closed for so long, and yet people have been yearning to go back.
Yeah.
They're saying that this is where we're going back. It's as long haul as it gets from the UK, you know. And then we had some of our favorite destinations that have been really popular in the past go quite a bit further down the list. So we had a very, you know, France was voted best country Sword Hall. People are rediscovering what's just across and just a simple train ride or a boat ride away. What are the trends that you're seeing at the adventures? Where are people going?
So we clearly have seen a spike in people wanting to go closer to home. That's more so for this summer into the back end of this year. But the other aspect is, you know, Thailand opening up is going to be huge for us. We're big in Thailand. So I think, you know, there's still some issues in terms of PCR testing, 24 hours in a hotel and then off you go. But that's a huge uptick for us. So Thailand for sure. And the other aspect as well is that we bring different things to Thailand as well. We have a Northern Hills Tribe Trek, which, you know, has been popular. I think it'll be even more popular coming forward as well. The USA, bizarrely enough.
Yeah, people are discovering the beauties of the US, especially.
Well, it's an interesting
next week we get to go back. How exciting!
Yeah.
After so long not being able to go there.
Well, the other thing as well with the US, I think a lot of people were put off of going to the US, rightly or wrongly, because of the politics that was in the country at the time. So we call it a Biden bump in some respect, but clearly no one's been able to ride that wave because no one's been able to get in there. And that's another example of how we look at products. So in the US, it's such a vast country, such an amazing array of things to do.
Yes.
So we did create product in the US for our US customers. So it's called the USA of Adventures. And, you know, that program was phenomenally successful for our domestic market in America. And then we looked at the program and said, okay, now that we're rejigging that program, we need to think about that for everywhere else. How can we improve what we had in the first place and re-engineer it? So we've literally just launched, I think it's 18 tours, takes us up to about 28 tours over there. You can go and do the cities, but at the same time, the parks are just
stunning.
unbelievable.
Yeah, they really are. They really are.
We've got some projects there where we work with indigenous communities, so that's an important facet for us as well, where they can tell their story.
It's great that you mentioned that, because that's one of the other questions, as we conclude our chat, Brian. You mentioned indigenous communities. That's a really key theme for Wanderlust as well. People are now, responsible travel isn't just a thing that's for the few conscious travelers, if you like. Everyone's becoming conscious now. That's a pattern we've seen. Is that something that people are they taking the sustainability element a lot more into consideration in what they do than before?
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I think, look, you can't get away from it at the moment. It's in the news because of COP26 at the minute, but they definitely, the key most important thing is, people are very conscious. I think what you'll see is, people will travel further afield for longer, so that carbon footprint, they're not taking so many flights as such for such short durations. And the other beauty is, if you think about some of the stuff that we've done, you could go on holiday to Crete, stay on a beach for a week, do an adventure holiday for a week, and therefore, you're not just in and out for a week as such. So you're extending that. So that's an important thing. I think you'll see people go on holiday for longer and therefore get more immersed in a destination and the communities and the culture of a destination. So
I think immersive tourism is absolutely here to stay.
That's without a shadow of a doubt. And what our view is that, everyone should go on holiday and have a fantastic time. And at the same time, know that by going on holiday, you're also doing really good, whether that be for the community or for the planet. They're the key pieces. Make sure that, that when you travel, that the impact that you make when you go is a positive impact.
That's right, that's right. Brian, we've got a couple of more minutes that I'm going to take, if Charlotte allows me, just to see if there are any questions from the audiences. Anything that you'd like to ask? No? Well, Brian, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a really interesting chat. And you guys know, if you are interested in exploring far-flung destinations the responsible, the sustainable way, G Adventures are here. They cover the whole planet. And we're very, very eager to go on an adventure with you in the future as well. Wanderlust, thank you for joining us.
No, pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of WTM. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.